Hey, hey, hey! My name is Tammy. I am a human being, and thank you for joining me today. In today's video, I am going to show you how I make an embroidered quilt label for my spring fling throw quilt. Stay tuned. Since you are my friend, I'm going to let you in on my process as to how I square up the edges of my quilted project. So I actually use my serger. I used a 4-thread serge stitch. And what I do is I take the completed project and I just run it through the serger. What that does is, first of all, it squares up my project, and also it ensures that all 3 layers of my project stick together. And so then when I go to add my binding, it's less work for me. So now let me show you how I embroider the quilt label for this project. Stay tuned. I selected a quilt label from Designs by Juju. I absolutely love her designs. I also use her end-to-end quilting designs for my quilted projects. So once you've selected your quilt label embroidery design, you then need to prep your fabric. So since my design will be about 4 inches wide, I selected my 6-inch OmniGrid acrylic ruler and I just cut out a square. So essentially it was like this. I just cut the square fabric. This is just a piece of like a white grunge fabric that I have yardage of. And once I use the acrylic ruler or acrylic template to cut the 6-inch square, I folded it in half and then I ironed or I pressed the seam here. The next step is to make sure that you properly hoop your stabilizer and your triangle here. I have a Brother Stellaire embroidery machine, and this hoop is the 6x9-inch hoop that comes with the machine. The first layer of stabilizer that I'm using is a cutaway stabilizer. And the reason why you see this line here, I had to seam both of them together, is in addition to the Brother Stellaire, I have a Barradin 15 needle commercial machine. And so I typically purchase pre-cut squares of stabilizer because I do a lot of embroidery as well as quilting. So you basically center that stabilizer on your hoop. The next stabilizer that I'm using will be a tearaway stabilizer, and I'm just going to put that on top like this. So then I take my triangle, and this triangle needs to be centered so that your embroidery design will be in the center of your triangle. The way I'm going to accomplish that is I am going to off camera center everything, but I'm going to use one of these Target stickers by Dime Designs in Machine Embroidery, and I'm going to center everything up and it'll look like that. Again, I'll do that off camera, or I could use one of my Target snowmen for my Brother machine, but I'm going to use this one because I don't know, I want to use it today. So stay tuned. I'll come back and show you how I hoop everything up. When I do my embroidery designs, I like to do a stitch out first, to make sure that it stitches well and that there aren't any glitches in the design. With designs from Juju, excellent digitizing, so I typically don't have a problem. But I also want to see the scale of how the design will look once it's stitched out. So this is what it'll look like. And as you can see here, I've already put my Target sticker here, and it'll essentially sit in the center like that. So the next step is to hoop everything up and start the embroidery process. But wait, there's a secret tip. What I'm going to do is attach, once this label is stitched out, it's going to attach to this corner of my project. And so again, I serged the quilt sandwich together so I could just square it up and all 3 pieces are together for the attaching the binding process. So because I'm going to attach my label here, This will be, I'll stitch it on here, and then I'll stitch it on here, and of course I'll add the binding. But this part will be like a pocket. And so what'll happen is if I were to just embroider as such, then on the back of this or the inside of this, you will feel the stitches. So a secret hack that I've come up with is, that's another reason why I press a pretty sturdy fold here, is that I will lift this up, and then from here I'm going to make sure that this is centered in my hoop. And again, my brother Stellar has a camera system, so I'm going to use the camera system to make sure that my embroidery is exactly where I want it. I'm going to make sure that this other half is away from my needle so it does not get stitched in. Therefore, when it's all said and done and I remove it off the hoop, you just fold it back and then ta-da, you stitch it in. You have a pocket and the stitches are covered. So stay tuned and I'll show you what that looks like. My embroidery sandwich is all hooped up. Let me explain to you why you see this green painter's tape here and why there are different layers of stabilizer. So this first layer of stabilizer, which is on the bottom, is the cutaway stabilizer, and that one is used to sort of make sure that this hooping sandwich or the sandwich stays properly hooped. The next layer is the tearaway, and the tearaway will just provide some extra stability for the stitches. And what that'll do is over time, as this project gets washed, it'll just sort of keep those stitches from sinking in. One of the secrets to achieving pretty good looking embroidery is to make sure that your fabric is hooped and is tight in is hooped properly. And that means that it's tight in the frame. So since I am embroidering essentially a triangle, that triangle does not get completely hooped. So what I've done is, because remember this flip part, if it were hooped like this in the square, then I wouldn't have this challenge. But because I want to embroider the triangle piece, these layers or this layer or this fabric, if I don't do something to stabilize it as it's embroidering, it could flip up and create some problems for me. So what I've learned to do is to just take some painter's tape, and it's easily removed and it doesn't stain your fabric. You just tape it here, and then you put another piece here. So this will not get stitched, so it won't gum up my needle or anything like that. And to prove it, here is my stitch out sample. And as you can see, I just literally laid it in the center of this hooped sandwich, and it'll go right there. So as you can see, it's nowhere near the tape. I also put my Target sticker here. And what'll happen next is I have the Brother Stellar, and there's the camera system where I use the app to scan the hoop onto the machine so that I can make sure my stitches are going exactly where I want them to go. So let me take you over to Darrow and I will show you that process. Stay tuned. Here we are at Darrow, who is my Brother Stellar embroidery machine. And this design is 8,906 stitches, and it has 3 color changes, and it will take approximately 10 minutes to stitch out. So this is actually my favorite feature of this machine. The Brother Luminaire has an onboard or an on-machine camera. I did not want to spend the money for a Luminaire. Instead, I bought a commercial Barrett, and then I just bought the Stellar, which is just fine for me. And so this is, again, one of my favorite features, is that you can use the app on your cell phone. You take a picture of the hoop and then you load it in, and look, this is actually where everything is lined up on the hoop. So here's the actual hoop. And as I showed you earlier, I placed where is it? Oh, I placed this one here just to kind of show you how it would stitch out okay, and then it wouldn't stitch the painter's tape. So what I'm going to do now is I don't know if you can see it, but there's crosshairs here that are not lined up with the crosshairs on the target sticker. So what I'm going to do is line those crosshairs up and then start the embroidery process. I will show you the finished project when it's done. Stay tuned. Ta-da! Daryl has completed the stitching process for my quilt label. And let me remove the hoop and show you what it looks like on the backside. Here is a close-up of the embroidered quilt label. And it says, Stitch with Love for Dr. Tammy 2024. I am Dr. Tammy. Yes, that's me. And here is the backside. This is what the backside looks like. So the next step is to remove this embroidered label from the hoop, and let me show you how I cut everything up. Stay tuned. Next, I'm going to remove everything and cut it up so that I can prepare it for insertion to my spring fling throw quilt. So just move that, take that off there, take that off, and then what we're left with is the cutaway stabilizer and the tearaway stabilizer. So all I'm going to do here is stop the camera and cut and remove all the stabilizer and then come back and show you what that looks like. Stay tuned. Ta-da! All the stabilizer has been cut away and torn away. And so let me show you what the inside of that looks like. So remember, this was that flap of the square that we cut to just essentially turn over like this. So the inside or the back side looks like this. And I just cut my cutaway stabilizer, I don't know, maybe a ½ inch larger than the embroidery design. So here is the magic in doing the process that I did earlier with the square. So what happens is now this just folds over and look, it covers all of those stitches. So then when I go to my project, and I go ahead and straight stitch this down here, this becomes a secret pocket or just the flat part, and then it'll be nice and pretty. Versus if I didn't have that, then imagine if this were like this, and then I sew this down here and sew this down here. When you pull it back, you would see all that stabilizer, right? So it'd be here and then you would see it. But because I used the square and I folded it over, it'll go like this. I'll stitch it down. Look, no stitches, no stabilizers. Stay tuned and I'll show you what the final project looks like. Let me show you how I secured or pinned this label to my project. So what I did was I pressed the embroidery label nice and flat, and then I use my clapper to make sure that that this seam is flat and that the stitches are set and flat. And then I just place 3 pins. So one here, and then one here. So what I'm going to do now is stitch this down about 1/8 of an inch away here, because I'm going to attach my binding in another video and use a 1/4 inch seam for my binding. So I'm going to sew this at 1/8 of an inch, and then I'll show you what it looks like when it's finished. Stay tuned. Oh my stars, we have made it to the end of this quilt label that is attached to my spring fling throw quilt. Yay! So this is what the finished product looks like. Stitch with Love for Dr. Tammy 2024. That's me, Dr. Tammy. And here is that stitch line where I attached it. And oh, by the way, I used a walking foot to stitch this label on. I have a vintage Singer 201-2 that I have a wonderful walking foot for. So that's how I was able to get such nice stitching here. Remember that pocket? Ta-da! There it is. You cannot see those stitches and it doesn't rub up against you, and it's kind of like a secret pocket. Let me show you what the front looks like. This is the front, And so here's the edges. And again, when I attach the binding, you won't even see this. It'll just get hidden away in the binding. There we have it. If you learned something from this video, if you enjoyed it, if you found value in it, I would so much appreciate it if you would hit that subscribe button. I am on my way to 1,000 subscribers. So please help me out and join me in the next video. Thank you so much. Bye.